Matthew.
Sure, thanks a lot. Matthew Lee, Inner City Press, on behalf of the Free UN Coalition for Access. Thanks a lot for this briefing. I wanted to ask about an issue that came up in the last run, which was countries giving aid, basically kind of pay to play. I mean, it's the kind of scrutiny that would be given to, say, elections certainly in the United States and elsewhere, that whether countries make trade agreements or otherwise in exchange for votes, do you feel at a minimum that should be disclosed, if not prohibited? Is there some idea on this bouncing around? And also, Mr. Turlington, I heard you mention the OCHA fight, so the OCHA, not fight, the OCHA process. So I wanted to know, this came up also at IPI on Friday, but for the two of you, I wanted to know, do you think that the sort of partial opening of that process, at least to seek the best or a better UK candidate, as opposed to the one initially put forward, is a step forward, and as opposed to, it still seems to be the unwritten rule in the UN that these major Undersecretary General posts belong to the P5, or in the case of DPA, DPKO, and OCHA, to the P3 countries, and how is that consistent with this idea of the UK being a leader and progressive on the SG front if they demanded that this OCHA post remain theirs? Thanks.
Maybe I'll do the no promises and you will do the... and Natalie will respond on the UK question because she knows it intimately. Thank you very much, Matthew, for raising this, because one of the most important things we want to highlight is precisely the practice that there have been backroom deals in the past. We believe that this is a practice that actually goes against the whole spirit of the Charter of the United Nations. If you read Article 100 of the Charter, it says, in the performance of their duties, the Secretary General and the staff shall not seek or receive instructions from any government or from any other authority external to the organization. They shall refrain from any action which might reflect on their position as international officials responsible only to the organization. And therefore, a key point of our policy platform is that we would like that candidates are not being put under any pressure by any government, including notably the P5, to have to make promises on posts and other promises that you are highlighting in your question in exchange for support. It is unfair. It inhibits the practice, the key campaign aim that is an aim of the entire world, I would say, of we the people, to get the best person in one of the most important jobs in the world. At this time in particular, that is very, very important. So thank you for raising the question. And over to Natalie on the UK position.
Just to follow on from that, I think that's why we are really calling for a more transparent process, because if all of us knew well in advance which countries are being seriously considered, which candidates are being seriously considered, then we can all, as civil society and the media, do our jobs and follow what's going on and monitor any promises and other such things. I think the example of the OCHA appointment was very important in that it shows that it is worth taking a stand. You know, it's a part of the game, we all know it, but I think we need to have this discussion as part of this reform process, because by doing it in the OCHA case, we had an outcry from civil society, we had media coverage, it put pressure on the UK to ultimately field more and better candidates. And I think that is a sign of the way we need to proceed if we want to get better quality.
And again, the whole idea that the P5 get entitlement Undersecretary General appointments, who are the main positions, whether it's procurement, OCHA, DPA, DPKO, economic positions, et cetera, is unacceptable, ought to be unacceptable to the other 188 member states. The P5 all have extremely highly qualified individuals, but they ought to put those individuals forward in a nomination process like the Secretary Generals have started to use on a number of the highest level positions. We think, for example, of the High Commissioner for Human Rights nominations and appointments over the last two human rights terms. So, and understand that this will be one of the fierce reasons why most of the P5 are going to be wanting to contain this effort to reform the appointment process. As you also mentioned, the whole prospect now of ministers, heads of governments going out with tens and hundreds of millions of euros of their government treasuries, campaigning for this post for 2 or 3 years, or even we have examples of heads of international organizations and agencies spending 1 or 2 years campaigning almost full-time for this position. These also are reasons why the appointment process should be reformed. And again, it cannot be reformed if the UN media don't pick this up, don't discuss the issues, don't talk to their media and their editors, etc., about these issues. They are important. As both Yvonne and Natalie have said, most people cannot believe that as one of the ambassadors told me a week or so ago, they do more interviewing and vetting of people who want to be the janitors for their mission than is done in appointing the Secretary General of the United Nations at this point. Now, it is a chance to change, and we hope it will change. Last question, Matthew?
Thanks a lot. I appreciate it. I appreciate that. I wanted to just ask some very specific things, because I appreciate your candor. One is I wanted to understand, Mr. Pace, when you said that the reference to people heading international agencies using time to lobby. It's widely reported that Helen Clark of UNDP is a candidate, or views herself as a candidate. Have you heard? Is there a reform proposal that people currently holding such a post should not be able to run? And I wanted to, on this issue of USGs, I wanted to ask very specifically, because it's widely reported that the DPKO post was promised to France in exchange for one of the previous SGs getting in. And I wanted to know, since this continues to clank around, do you think that whoever the next SG is should say that link, wherever the wisdom of it at the time, should not remain anymore, in terms of particular countries being promised particular posts, in this case 4 times in a row? Thank you.
The answer is, I'm not speaking of Helen or anyone in specifically, but I mean, it is very clear that when heads of organizations spend all their time, or a minister or a head of government spends all their time campaigning for another post, there's an issue. What we're saying is, why not establish the nomination procedure, announcing it by the GA and the Council on December 1st or something, to be completed in January or February or something, then start hearings with the candidates, whether you have the council precede the GA or not is something that I'm certain that the 2 bodies could work out, or just coordinate. So let's get it down to this, so that the highest qualified people in the world know they might even have a chance if they are nominated. At this point, it is, as Natalie said, who is the least unacceptable between the U.S., Russia, and China. That's really the problem. Oh, and you have to speak French, and we get DPKO or something. I mean, but this is what ought to stop if we're going to have a much more professional process going forward. And I think you will see, if you write about it and your editors write about it, that there is more political will to move on this. It's just something that is in this UN bubble. So.
Okay.
Okay.
Very.
All right.
Do you have any thoughts of why 2 of the most qualified women are leaving their jobs or pushed out or whatever? That's Valerie Amos and Angela Kane. And they're not being replaced by women, and it's near the end of Ban Ki-moon's term, so it would have been logical to leave them in there. But that's just wonder if you had any thoughts. Or you can't say them. We'll talk afterwards.
Yeah, that would be for another press briefing. Thank you very much for letting us address this, and again, thank Liechtenstein for sponsoring.